Well, this is a bit of a different video for the channel. This is my 1964 Fender Vibroverb. If you've watched the most recent That Pedal Show video that released today, the day of me making this video, Mick and Scott McKeon go over essential Stevie Ray Vaughan tones and gear, demo lots of amazing tube screamers and amplifiers, one of them being a vintage Vibroverb, just like mine, of course, most famously used by Stevie Ray Vaughan. The tones Scott and Mick were getting in that video were just absolutely incredible. It was one of my favorite That Pedal Show episodes in recent time. They're all great, but this one just really was very unique and very special. They did such a great job with it. And that video actually kind of inspired me to talk about this amplifier just a little bit, my example of this amplifier a little bit on the channel, because on the channel I mainly talk about obviously John Mayer's gear and kind of try and help all of you guys out with giving you the right information, the most entertaining information as well, and it doesn't really talk about the things that I am into, the things that I personally purchase and stuff like that. I usually save it for kind of my Instagram and stuff like that, but I know I've never actually openly discussed that I own this exact amplifier. I purchased it over a year ago. It was kind of a unique scenario that really everything kind of came together in order for me to actually acquire really what was one of my holy grail amplifiers. But you're probably wondering at this point, okay, well, what is the exact point of the video? And I'm going to get into that in a little bit here after I just kind of tell a little bit of details about my specific example of this amp, because I actually need a little bit of help from you guys, especially if you're someone who has owned one of these amplifiers or who has had experience with these amplifiers, because it's currently not really in a state for me to actually play it and really enjoy it, unfortunately, right now. And I want to be the best custodian of this amplifier and my time with it, and I want to take the best care possible that I can with it. So I kind of wanted to discuss a little bit and see if you guys, for a change, can help me out instead of me kind of providing you guys with really great information. Maybe you guys can kind of provide me with some and help me out. And if you guys want to hear a vintage Fender Vibroverb and what that sounds like, go and just watch the That Pedal Show episode with Mick and Scott McKeon demoing all of the Stevie Ray Vaughan tones and gear. Scott is just such a fantastic player. He does the Stevie Ray Vaughan thing so just utterly brilliantly too. He gets way more out of an amplifier like this than I ever could dream to, and so does Mick. Mick always sounds fantastic with the Strat in his hands too, so those two get some incredible tones and some discussion as well around this amplifier and how Stevie used it. So if you want to hear kind of what this amplifier sounds like, go and just watch that video. And also, I apologize, I think I might have called Scott McKeon Scott McKinnon earlier in the video. I obviously got too much NHL hockey on the brain, so I just want to throw that out there. I might have accidentally done that, so just apologies for that, but it's Scott McKeon. But just some background information around my specific amplifier in case you guys are curious. I talked about it a bit on my Instagram before, especially when I first bought it, but it's basically all original. Things like the caps inside, which just need to be replaced in order to have the amplifier actually running properly, have obviously been replaced now due to the amp's age. It's got a 3-prong cord as well, which just is something you'd expect, and I would have just done to the amplifier if it hadn't had one when I got around to purchasing it. And the Tolex and everything else is actually completely original. The grill cloth, however, isn't, which is a bit of an interesting thing with this specific amplifier, and it kind of makes me wonder what the amp's story is, because the Tolex is in such amazing condition. It looks so great, and same with the actual faceplate of the amplifier too. It's all in really fantastic condition, even the little leg stands on the side too. All amazing, original, great condition, but the grill cloth has been replaced, so I wonder if like a cigarette butt got put through it, or if it started to age and whoever owned it at the time just didn't like how it looked back in the day and they replaced it with a more modern one, or if someone kicked through it or something. Who knows? But the grill cloth is not original, and it's something I do want to replace with a more vintage, correct looking one at one point. And that's also why the Fender logo is in a bit of a wrong spot, and I actually didn't quite realize that when I bought it. Someone on my Instagram had actually pointed it out, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess it is a little lower than it should be, but it's part of the amp story. The amp, I've last been able to trace it through Emerald City Guitars. I bought it through a private seller, but that was where it was before the seller bought it and added it to his collection for a number of years. But otherwise, like I said, it's all original and in rather amazing condition. The speaker, as you can tell by the cone, you should know what this is if you've watched any of my videos talking about John Mayer's amplifiers, because I've tried to kind of hammer this point home. It's the JBL D130F. You can tell it's the JBL because of that cone peeking through the grill cloth. This comes with that original JBL speaker, which was a factory option at the time when they were making these amplifiers. So to get that kind of more desired speaker out of the amplifier, and what we believe is the one that John Mayer is actually using, of course, this channel being a heavy John Mayer gear focused channel. Today it's not necessarily, but trying to tie it in there for you guys. That was a big selling point with this amplifier for me as well. Obviously getting that JBL speaker in it too. And speaking of John Mayer and his use of the Fender Vibroverb 2, I've done a whole deep dive just on John's use of this one single amplifier alone. So go and watch that video. It'll also be linked in the description down below, along with that Pedal Shows episode on Stevie Ray Vaughan tones for you guys to check out as well. So I'm not really going to dive into it too much here. John, if you want some kind of quintessential performances, listen to anything from the John Mayer Trio era that used a Vibroverb live. Even during the recording process of Continuum, a Vibroverb was in the studio with John mic'd up. What exact context it was used for, we don't exactly know, but we know it was in the studio with them. And then, of course, the John Mayer solo tour as well. John was using a Vibroverb, but mic'd through an Alessandro 212 cabinet, not using the JBL or any other speaker out of the Vibroverb. And then as well, one-off performances like the Sob Rock kind of televisional promotional performances in recent times. The Everybody Wants to Rule the World cover with Alexander 23 uses one of these. One of my favorite Mayer solo performances of all time, actually, where he joined someone. That solo with his Jackson was just fantastic, just for some kind of context and tying it in. And that's really the reason why I bought this amplifier, was John's influence on me, seeing the John Mayer Trio era, where he had the Dumble, ODS, the 2-Rock custom reverb signature, whether it was the Signature 83 or a version 1 custom reverb signature, and then the Fender Vibroverb sat in between those two amplifiers for the trio rig to number 1. I thought it looked so cool, that wall of 3 amplifiers. But then as well, there's a old school Fender amplifier that's keeping up with the Dumble and a 2-Rock, and I always thought that was super cool when I kind of first got into John Mayer and his tones and kind of guitar as well. So I never thought I'd be able to own, honestly, a vintage Vibroverb, but fortunately, you know, things have kind of just worked out that I do, and that's something that every time I look at this amplifier and every time I play this amplifier is definitely not lost on me. I still don't quite believe that it's mine and I own it. And watching that Stevie Ray Vaughan episode of that Pedal Show, John is obviously so heavily influenced by Stevie Ray Vaughan and all of his influences, like the Fender Vibroverb. He started using vintage Fender as one of his earliest Stratocasters. The main Stratocaster he used live at the very beginning of his career was a Fender Artist Series Stevie Ray Vaughan signature Stratocaster.
So I bought this in 1996, and this thing has so many little stories on it. This was replaced. I remember the day I had to order a replacement when I was in Atlanta in like 1998. 1999 maybe. I had a replacement put in there because I broke the whammy bar off in here. I got that from hitting drum cymbals with it. I thought it was really cool to hit drum cymbals.
And then, of course, Renee Martinez, SRV's guitar tech, ended up working for John for like almost 2 decades as well. So it's like John's influence with Stevie, and of course the TS-10 too, right? John's influence with Stevie Ray Vaughan is so apparent. Even though he doesn't always obviously sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan, you can hear little influences here and there in his own kind of music, but definitely when he covers Stevie Ray Vaughan and wants to kind of turn that sound on, he can definitely do it. He's one of the best players to actually do the SRV thing on the planet, I think. But to kind of see how his influences from Stevie kind of, you know, came and influenced the gear choices that he's made, to then someone like me who, you know, I use a TS-10 now, I play a Strat, I have a Vibroverb now. It's like the trickle-down effect of your heroes copying their heroes, and how then it all comes back down to me. I just thought that was really cool and something kind of worth just acknowledging. It's kind of just a cool moment watching that video, and just kind of, it re-sunk in a little bit, kind of hearing the history of Stevie Ray Vaughan going after the tones, talking about different live albums and how he's acquired all these different gears, like the Fender Vibrotone too and everything like that. Like John used one during the trio era even, so it's like, It's just a pretty cool thing. But besides just having a bit of an open discussion around this amplifier, John's influences, Stevie Ray Vaughan, the whole kind of thing, and a bit of my influences as well, because obviously, you know, this is my channel and a lot of you guys just like, we like to just chat about our gear and our influences and stuff like that, and what kind of, I like to just inform you guys a little bit of what I've got going on. Not a ton. I like to just keep my channel very informative and kind of factual, not really about me at all, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to make something just talking about it while it's relevant and kind of on my mind. But the main kind of other reason why I wanted to make this video is, you know, I don't know that much about vintage amplifiers. I don't know parts about circuitry. I don't know how to maintain them. I have a very, very qualified friend who works on all of my amplifiers for me. I have a 2203 JMP Marshall, the exact same one John Frusciante is using live currently, that was really had a lot of issues, and he made it run better than it's ever had in that amplifier's life. So I have a guy I really, really trust. But I wanted just to get some of your guys' advice, because this amplifier right now is basically in need of new tubes. From what I've been able to deduce, the tubes have finally gone on it after me enjoying it for a little bit over a year. I'm pretty sure the power tubes are what need replacing. Now currently what I have in there, and I had to make sure I write that down so I actually remembered and get it right, is Tungsol 606 G6 7581As are in there. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I want to be the best custodian. I want to respect the amp's history. I want to respect what it is. Do you guys have any experience with the Vibroverb like this? Do you guys know what kind of tubes? Because obviously the tubes alter the sound. The tubes have an effect on the way the amplifier runs and everything like that. And like I said, like I have people in my circle that I trust to give me good advice, but I wanted to kind of extend that out there to you guys, and hopefully in the comments or DMs on Instagram, if that's the way you want to go about it, is what tubes you guys think would work the best in an amplifier like this. Because like I said, I don't have that much experience. I know there is varying things I've talked about with the gentleman Tone Hungry Effects, by the way, is who it is, who was working on it and talked about getting like some like new old stock tubes, but I know that can get like absurdly expensive. I don't know if there's, you know, what kind of companies are out there right now making really good ones that work very well in these kinds of amplifiers, kind of stay true to the original sound. I don't really know kind of what the deal is with tubes and what's a good brand of tube, what's not a good brand of tube, what's a good thing to look at, what's not, because, you know, like I said, 606 GCs, the 7581As, even then it's kind of like, okay, I understand what they are to a degree, but I don't understand what would also be like a relative substitute if I don't go down that route, or what's the difference between them and a different type of 606, for example. I don't really know, to be honest, and trying to research it over the past few weeks, it's a lot, and I'm not that confident even in just the research I've been doing on like getting a concrete kind of answer. So I'd rather kind of reach it out to you guys to be like, do you guys have any advice on what tubes would work really well in this amplifier? Because like I said, I want to take good care of it. I want to, you know, respect the amplifier, and I want to do right by it. So I just kind of want to hear some different ideas and maybe some things for me to go down and actually look and like figure out, okay, what could work in this amplifier and be really good sounding, especially if you have obviously if you have first-hand experience with this amplifier. That'd be the best case scenario, because then I can kind of go with, okay, if you've experimented maybe or something like that, what works really well, what makes the amp run the best, what makes it sound the best, if they have different characteristics in terms of the tone and what they do to it. That'd be kind of interesting to know too, because then that kind of helps me go down a certain path of like, okay, this might be more what I'm looking for than a different option, for example. The other thing too is that I don't know if I should swap out the preamp tubes and just do kind of like a whole clean out of all of the tubes and get something that's a bit more vintage spec or vintage accurate. The covers are on them right now, and I just, to be honest, haven't taken them off yet because I don't believe those are the issue. Basically, to be transparent to what the issue is the amp has started to get very noisy. It just kind of was a sudden onset where one day I plugged it in and was playing decently loud, and a lot of noise was happening, and I would do the thing where I just tap the top of the amplifier and kind of right above the power tubes. Tapping it kind of quietens it down a little bit, and then it goes again. And I remember when I bought it too, the life of the tubes was something that was very much like I knew it was going to be something that would need to get replaced depending on how much I played it. And unfortunately this year has been rather crazy for me personally, and I haven't played guitar as much as I've wanted to either, so I kind of extended the life of them, I think, a little bit longer than maybe I first kind of initially thought they were, but I knew the tubes were going to be something I'd want to replace and change out eventually. Bit of a different video today. I just thought it was kind of cool to share a little bit of my thoughts on, like I said, John Mayer's influence on me is so huge, and the connection between him and Stevie Ray Vaughan, and just how much I truly enjoyed the That Pedal Show episode. I thought it was so brilliant, honestly. I mean, all of the gear they went over to, like that Fender Vibratone sounded amazing. The SRV #1 was incredible. The different tube screamers as well was so cool. That oddly covered special amplifier too that they had in there, like that Dumble style amplifier, like just the gear was pretty interesting and pretty cool, and just it was a bit of a diversion kind of from the usual That Pedal Show episode in a really good way. It kind of made things a little bit more fresh in my opinion, and it was just kind of like, okay, like we're doing something a little bit out there. It was one of like their special episodes, like when they have Robin Ford on or Chris Buck or Ariel Posen. It was one of those special episodes where I was like, okay, this is really cool and really unique, and only Mick and Dan, bless Dan, he's still sick, it sounds like, so that's why he wasn't there that day, but only those guys really have the connections, and they do such a great job of what they do. And I know my good friend Jake Loosemore helps out with Mick and Dan on That Pedal Show from time to time as well. They just do such a great job with their videos, and it was very inspiring to watch today, and just made me inspired and want to talk about this amplifier. So I hope you guys can understand kind of why I haven't talked about getting this amplifier on the channel. You maybe have seen it kind of in the background in some of the other videos that I've made, and we're like, oh, like something's changed there, or something like that. I had a reissue at one point, and then when this came up, I sold the reissue to help fund this amplifier a little bit, because I was just like, oh, at this point, let's just go for the actual thing. But yeah, at this point now, that's kind of where the channel is at. I really want to be just very informative, but kind of give some thoughts occasionally and just kind of chat with you guys for a change. And I just thought this would be a fun video. So anyways, I've probably been rambling on for a little bit now. I appreciate you guys if you've watched the video all the way to the end and just hearing me talk and kind of sharing my thoughts. And it's kind of something that's pretty cool that I own. Maybe one day in the nearish future, I'll get another aux or something like that and work on, maybe trying to do some tones with this amplifier on the channel too. I think that would be really, really cool. I just sold all my recording gear because I wasn't really using it, and I kind of, wanted to go with a mic setup instead and then do that, but then that just kind of never ended up happening. So I want to get back to maybe sharing some tones, and especially once I get this amplifier running, I'm just not going to run it until I do replace the tubes at this point and make sure everything else is working correctly, because the last thing I want to do is damage it. It's too pristine. It's been treated very properly its whole life, it seemed like, and I'm definitely not going to mistreat this amplifier now, that's for sure. But eventually, to be able to share some tones with you guys, I think could be really cool with this amplifier, and just kind of, show you guys maybe a little bit of context in the way Mary uses it, as I always tend to do with the channel. But yeah, if you made it all the way to the end, I appreciate you guys. Like I said, if you have any ideas, any even just directions you can point me in a little bit, like I said, I have someone that I know and trust will help me point in the right direction, but I just thought it'd be cool to open it up to you guys as well for some discussion, and maybe what would be the best if you've especially had first-hand experience. So hopefully some of you guys can help me out, and if you know someone who has one, maybe let me know. I've commented, and I might even try and DM Scott and what he uses in his, because his sounds absolutely fantastic. So just as a curious point, hey, what tubes are using in it? What else have you or do you know to look out for, or anything, maybe just from someone who's very experienced with this specific amplifier. Anyways, you guys, thanks for watching. Take care, and hopefully I'll get some helpful responses or some insight. I'll appreciate it. Take care, everyone.